Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Grassroots Racer. Today's guest started his motorsport journey just a little bit later on in life. He started out in Hyundai XL and he's a really good guy, really great chat. And I welcome Matt Powell to the show. So Matt, how did you first get involved in motorsport?
So basically, this year is my first year competing in any form of competitive motorsport. It was something I always wanted to do as a kid, but growing up, my family wasn't really in a position to fund something like that. So now that I'm a little bit older and I've got my own job and I make my own money, I decided that I've got the ability to go and try something. So we went and did a V8 drive day here at Hidden Valley. And essentially, by the time I got into turn one and hit the brakes for the first time, I decided that, like, yes, this is the thing that I want to do. I'd been a fan all my life since 4 or 5 years old. I can remember watching early Formula One telecasts, and my old man taking me to the Grand Prix in Melbourne, which is where we grew up. And we were 15, 20 minutes from Sandown, so we spent a bit of time there watching, Sandown 500 and events like that. So it's something I always wanted to do, and I've finally hit the point in my life where I'm actually able to go and do it. And so, yeah, this year we just bit the bullet, committed to it, and bought a car and jumped straight in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, man. I thought you were I thought you were about to say you went to the Grand Prix every year from Darwin where you are now. That
Oh,
would
yeah, no,
that would
no.
have been a fair effort.
Yeah, logistically it'd be a bit more challenging, right? Financially, I guess it'd be a bit more challenging to do it. No, spend most of my childhood growing up in Melbourne. So.
Yeah. Well, let's sort of kick it off then. What car was the first one? Oh, well, which was your first car that you bought this year?
So this year we bought a Hyundai XL race car. The car was built by a small team down in Perth that ran it in the WA Championship there for I think maybe a year or two. And then there's a couple of competitors and team owners up here in Darwin trying to grow the category up here. So one of them had bought the car and had it shipped to Darwin. And we saw it advertised around the same time that I started to think like, hey, I want to go racing. And he cut us a deal on the price. He helped us transport it to the track a couple of times and things like that. Helped us out with spare parts and whatnot. So yeah, we bought that car and we've pretty much done pretty much everything ourselves. I'm not a big team. I don't have a workshop or anything like that. It's just me and the missus in the garage doing sort of what we can with what we got. But yeah, so it's pretty unique. I've only seen, I think, maybe one other. So it's a X3 race car, but it's a sedan. So you don't see too many that aren't a hatch getting around. So it normally gets a few looks when people see photos and see it at the track and stuff like that. So it's kind of unique in a way.
Yeah. Oh well, that's pretty much the definition of grassroots. Starting in the
Yeah.
garage by yourself. Like I do that as well. I have a couple mates who come down and give a hand when they can. Well, actually, he went up and raced. Did you do Darwin for the high tech series this year?
I did. Yeah, that was my
Yeah.
first event. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so do you know Liam Hall? He was running
Yeah, I
up the
do. Yeah.
front. Yeah.
Uh,
So he
he
comes
put a
with
good show on.
stunners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen a few of his races on the TV since. I think he was at Call the Park just recently as well. And
Yeah.
obviously his vehicle is very distinct and a bright yellow as well. But yeah, he put on a good show, him and Zach Hannon up here in Darwin. The two of them were battling it out across the four races and yeah, got a fair bit of TV time. And yeah, it was good to watch. Yeah, good to see.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've known him since I first started karting, so we go a long way back, and it's really good. He's got a good mechanical side to him, and I've got a base knowledge, so when I'm at the track, it's really good to have someone else there, just spannering. So
Yeah, of course. It gets pretty busy when you're trying to drive and do your
yeah,
servicing in between races and things like that. So yeah, second person always helps.
yeah. So with the XLs, did you do a few test days before getting into it, and when did it hit you that you really wanted to do XL racing?
So we did do a couple of test days in the lead up to the high tech round. A lot of that was simply because I did the V8 drive day a couple of times, but I'd not been in a car by myself. And so the club president up here, and good on him for doing that. Thought, hey, we'll get you down on the track, let you cut a couple of laps, and just make sure that you've got some idea what's going on before we throw you in with a field of XLs at the high tech series. So that was pretty good. During that test, we found a problem with a gearbox in the car. So we got about 4 or 5 laps until we broke down and then had to shelve the car and spend a few days repairing that with the help of another team, which we're really grateful for. So we came back out. We did another couple test days. found that the problem was still there, but we'd narrowed it down. So we did that repair, and then the first time we hit the track and lasted a full session was practice and qualifying for the high tech round. So it really was like straight into it kind of thing. The choice of XLs, it's the price. It's affordable for entry level. Like it's still quite expensive, but it's a good place to start. Parts are still common. There's so many people racing them around the country that all the advice is there and all the experience is there. So it just seemed like a logical start point, particularly up here in Darwin, where the next closest category is probably Commodore Cup or improved production, which obviously the money involved there is a fair bit more investment. So XLs for us was a logical choice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in Darwin, the racing's getting a lot more popular, but it's never always been super. Like you haven't got so much variety. So down here, your two equal for cheapest at an entry point is Formula V and Hyundai Excel. And Perth do have it, but Perth do have a Formula V series. Yeah, they do, because I interviewed a few people. So did you look at Formula V at all, or you guys don't even run a series in Darwin?
So we don't have an open wheel series up here at all. We're pretty much limited to XLs. And even then, this year, what I believe was the biggest field that we've run. On a good day, I think for high tech, I think we had 13 or 14 competitors. For the supercars round, that jumped up to about maybe 25, 26, which is pretty good turnout for Darwin, considering how far everyone has to travel to get up here. But our club level rounds, we'd be lucky to get a field of 10. And this was the biggest field that we had. We had a few people moving up from go-karts. We had some guys who'd raced in previous seasons coming back to have a go again. And, of course, the interstate guys that came for high-tech and supercars sort of bolstered the field a little bit. Next to that, you've got HQs, still really popular in other parts of the country, but it's getting less popular here, particularly with a younger crowd. More people come go-karts and stuff like that seem to aim at XLs, which, again, makes a lot of sense. And then Commodore Cup and IP are the next two big ones. The good thing with the series here in Darwin, and I think it makes our XL Cup a little bit more unique, is that on a normal race weekend, we'll run 4 races, but our 4th race will be combined sedans. So they'll chuck everybody in on the track at one time. So even though individually each field is only, maybe 6 to 10 cars, we will run a, 15, 20 car field, which is good because you get that experience then racing cars that they might have a similar lap time, but they produce that speed in a different part of the track to what you do. So you've got to be a bit creative with your overtakes. And then, of course, having that awareness of like much faster cars, particularly the IP cars. You'll check the mirror coming onto the back straight and you think, I've got time making area. So it's probably a unique experience compared to running XLs in the other states.
Yeah, 100%. And down here in Victoria, if there's a Victorian state round that doesn't support XLs, you'll notice probably 5 jump in with the improved production because they let it slide. I think I'm not sure what they do to run in improved production, but they can sort themselves into a class anyway. And then sort of we get 40 to 50 car grids in XLs down here on average. There's people are knocking on doors and sometimes they say, look, we've got too many, so people can't actually enter. So it's not good to see that sort of how it is in Darwin, but it's good that you got the high tech and the supercars round.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely getting better. I think there's probably more that can be done up here to promote the sport. I think the thing that restricts it the most is just the logistics of getting people here. It's just such a long way to travel. And like the supercars round obviously attracts a lot of attention, but we didn't get a lot of running time this year. We did the three races on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and each of them were cut short with yellow flag and safety car, and it was probably the most expensive round for us to come and be a part of. So there's a lot of extras that come with it. It's, you're in the paddock, you get to walk around, you see all the supercar teams, the Porsche Cup teams, and all that sort of stuff. You've got essentially entry to the event and all that. So there's a lot of benefits that come with being a part of the show. But for those that made the trip up and probably got maybe 15, 20 minutes of race time, it'd probably be a little bit disappointing compared to the high-tech round where we did almost, I think it was about 200 and something odd kilometres across the weekend. So Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, one
but
thing
it's
I
getting
do. Yeah, one thing I do notice with the supercar rounds is they're very similar. Well, it is still a supercar round, but Bathurst. So people who get the
there.
Bathurst gig, the support categories, most of the time, if there's a red flag or they have to throw the yellow around Bathurst, they're only getting 1 or 2 laps maximum
Right.
for
Yep.
practice, just so they can meet supercar schedule. So
Yep.
it,
I was listening to one of your other podcasts in the lead up to this over the last couple of weeks. I've started listening to all your old shows when I'm at the gym or in the car and stuff like that, just to get a feel for it. And one of the lads you were talking to was saying that he raced at the support category for the Bathurst 6 hour, and the
yeah,
schedule was so tight they didn't even do a warm up lap. They just
yeah,
rolled straight on the and hit it from there, which like, blows my mind, especially a circuit like that. You don't want cold brakes and tires, so I guess that's the trade-off with the bigger events. Like you get that little bit of TV time and whatnot, but you got to run to the schedule that the that the big dog series wants to run. I guess so. It's definitely the risk of running at something like that.
but there's a positive and negative to that. If you're getting thrown straight out on cold tires and cold brakes, for someone like myself, that's how we always did it in go-karting. And my dad always, he would, on a frosty day, he'd throw me out on we'd go to the go-kart track and I'd say to him, Dad, can we go practice? Whatever. And then in the rain, I'd go drive on slicks. So for someone like myself, a cold track, that's great to me. But for someone like
Yeah,
you who stepped into it later, and being
yeah.
from Darwin, if you're thrown onto a cold track with cold tires, it's not going to go down well.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you don't touch the grass mid-year here, the grass gets a bit damp or whatnot. As long as you stay off that up here, you generally half a lap and everything's warm enough. But yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it would be a good advantage. Someone like yourself definitely make up a few places for those guys coming into state that might not be as familiar or confident driving the car like that. So yeah, it's yeah, good point.
I can't say anything for Phillip Island though, because you'll probably go out on the grid and it'll be bucketing down rain and it would be miserable. And then by the time you're sitting there with the red lights on, a big gust of wind will come up and dry the track. So the Victorian weather conditions are a bit sketchy sometimes.
Yeah, it's up and down. I used to live there, remember? So yeah,
Yeah.
I know what it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sandown's not bad for, well, like, yeah, you've been to Sandown and
Mm.
it's a good track. It's a really nice track to drive on. One of my favorites, to be honest, because it's a fast track, but very technical at the same time. So it is a horsepower track, like it's known for. But I do see, it's very technical to get it right.
Mm. I think it reminds me, I've only been there as a spectator, but it feels like Hidden Valley would be very similar. Long straights, not too much undulation, and a couple of really uh, corners that look quite simple, but maybe easy to learn, hard to master is probably
Mm.
the good analogy for it. And Sandown's definitely one. Of course, being from Victoria, it's one I want to go back and have a try, but also just the layout, the presentation, everything like that. It's definitely one I'm hoping to tick off sooner rather than later.
Yeah, if you can come back to Victoria and race at Sandown, I guarantee you'll enjoy it. It's such a good track, but the only thing I will say is the XL guys down here, there's no mercy. Like we
They
see,
for keeps, huh?
yeah. Well, last year, um, I know of someone who actually had a big rollover over some small contact at turn one. Like
Yeah, I've watched quite a few of any of the live streamed events and some of the replays and stuff like that. I'll go back and watch and
mm,
just try to get a feel for what other people are doing with their cars and who's fast and who's not and maybe how they approach certain corners and stuff like that. And yeah, there's one clip in particular. I can't remember what round it is or how old it is, but there's one clip in particular of a like a safety car restart 1 lap dash to finish that race at Sandown, and it's just cars. It's just carnage. There's just cars everywhere, and yeah, yeah.
similar thing happened at Sandown. I think it was round four this year. Um, we had the Formula Fords. They had a 1 lap dash thing, and like the last corner, one of them got loose, and the other one he kind of got loose and snapped back, and then someone T-boned him. Next minute, just bang! There's like a good few $1,000s of just open
Nowhere to
wheels sitting
go.
there.
Yeah. They're
But
harder to watch in pictures like that now that I know what the money value is of everything.
mm,
It's much harder to watch people, come unstuck. It's I feel for them every time I see it now.
yeah, And especially if you're racing Formula Ford on a budget, because that's still expensive.
Right? And open wheels are tricky too. Like the XLs, I think are a bit forgiving in that you can lean on people a little bit here and there, an accidental rub or intentional rub or whatever. You got the bumpers and the wheels are enclosed and stuff like that. But open wheelers, there's no there's less room for error, I guess.
Mm.
So yeah, definitely be a much trickier sport for sure.
Well, the Formula Fords have got side pods, so they've got a little bit of an advantage. Where the Formula Vs, it's we've got that much space. That's my
Yeah,
side. So if someone actually
yeah,
gets in front of your wheel and then there's a different, like, you'll just go like that over the top and
yeah.
gets messy. But
And expensive.
let's talk about your you doing a bit of RX8 Cup because I did see you
Yeah,
did a little bit
yeah,
of that. So how did you sort of get
yeah.
started with that?
So I was doing my normal, evening scroll through race car classifieds. Basically, I do a bit of daydreaming on there in between other things, and I seen an ad for a couple of cars for sale. So I sort of started looking at. I guess the intention with the XLs up here was always to uh, try and progress onto something a bit more advanced or a little bit harder sooner rather than later. So I was already looking at what options we might have. And then, yeah, I saw the ad for the RX8 Cup cars. I saw a team advertising for lease drives. So I phoned him up and pretty much said, like, what sort of price are we talking? Is there a prerequisite for the amount of experience that I have? And we sort of talked out the finer details. And when we looked at the calendar, they did back-to-back rounds at Sydney Motorsport Park in October. So we thought that would be a good chance. The team is based there as well, so logistically, it's one of the less expensive rounds for them. They're not moving interstate or having to truck cars or anything like that. So it seemed like a good opportunity to do, seeing that we were going to do a new car, a new circuit, but the benefit of having two rounds at the same track meant that I could learn it the first week and then hopefully build on that and improve the second week. So there was sort of no rush then to kind of get it too right the first time. But I had a great time down there. Really good experience going from a front wheel drive to rear wheel drive. I think the front wheel drive is a lot more forgiving of your mistakes, and corrections of oversteer are handled quite differently. So I think the XLs might not want to stay in them too long because I think it gives a false sense of security of how you might handle some of the slides and stuff like that in a differently balanced car and a more powerful car. But the big thing I noticed, one, the difference in the circuit was just amazing, to how it looks on TV to how it drives. In reality was quite different. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. But also driving a car that somebody else owns. That was a unique experience as well. Because I know with my car, I know everything about it. I tune it myself and repair it myself. I know what it costs and the amount of effort and time that goes into it. And I can make those little decisions on the track when there's a slight opening there. Is the field getting a little bit aggravated or whatever? You can make that decision like, oh, I might back out here, or like, no, I'm committing to it and pressing on. So I did find a little bit of a psychological barrier not owning the car and knowing that I wasn't repairing the car or I didn't prep the car. It was hard to really give it 100%. So that was definitely a unique experience, but also working with a team owner and they got a dedicated mechanic there that would do setups and things like that. Like, I'm used to jumping out of the car and there's a mad scramble to get your tire pressures right and fix things and repair things and clean windows and all the stuff that you got to do in between individual races. To have someone provided who does all that stuff, I sort of felt a bit out of place. So I was a bit like, hey, like, let me jump in and help you with this. But of course, I don't know where all the tools are, or I don't know where bits and pieces are. So that was definitely a unique experience as well. Really enjoyed it. I can't speak highly enough of the category. It was a great atmosphere. Everyone was really welcoming. It was a tough weekend, coming to grips with all the new car, new weather, new circuit, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was really enjoyable. And there's a few things going on in the background, but I'm sort of trying to sort out whether or not that's somewhere we look to go and race a full season in the future, but definitely I want to at least do a few more individual appearances.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what did you sort of think of SMP? Lots of people really love it. So what was your opinion on it?
It's a good facility. All the stuff off the track is fantastic. It was really well organised. Both events, one was another high-tech round, and then the other one was a state series round. And both times, I couldn't really fault the behind the scenes, all the bits and pieces that go on. The event management, I guess, was really good. The circuit itself is so different to Darwin. There's lots of big sweeping corners, and you're sort of committing to some of the bends without being able to see the apexes at the other side and things like that. So it was a much bigger, much wider circuit, a lot more undulation. So, getting the car balanced just right, having to factor in, up and down movement as well as left and right and the balance of the car and whatnot. So that was a really cool experience. And we did a couple night races for the high-tech round as well, which is something I've not done before. And it rained on the second weekend, which is something we don't do here in Darwin. Our season is dry season, and when it rains, it's deadly, so nobody does it. So I got to learn all this stuff for the first time, which was good. But yeah, as a racetrack, it was really enjoyable. I think we made the right choice doing 2 rounds back to back, because it meant I could sort of learn it the first time, and then you go away, you can watch your videos, you can. You take yourself around the track and you watch other recordings and things like that. And then the second time out, we were able to improve on that. So, but yeah, it was a good track. I enjoyed it. It's definitely a challenge. Much longer circuit as well, which is good. But yeah, facility's fantastic.
Yeah, SMP. It's a really nice looking circuit. I actually haven't been there yet. But I've got a simulator, so I get on with my mates and we do a bit of mess arounding. But oh, that was really bad English. But anyway, we get
Yeah.
on. Yeah, we get on, mess around and whatnot, and yeah, it looks like a fun circuit. But I was just trying to think in my head, like what sort of corners are similar. I guess the hairpin isn't similar to the hairpin at Darwin. It's more similar to the last corner because you're heading down and then powering onto a straight. So
Yeah. I found so definitely turn 1. We don't really have anything like that in Darwin. That's a bit of a gut check on the way in, particularly if you're not familiar with the car. So we spent a lot of time lap after lap, slowly bringing that, the entry point, and there's a slight lift and a little bit of brake on the way in. So just getting that quite right. When you do nail it, it's super rewarding, but it takes a bit to build up to it. But I would think that turn 2. Was one that reminded me a lot of turn 1 Darwin. The way that I approached that corner was very similar.
because of the double apex.
Yeah, it's kind of more so the way that you approach it in the braking area. I think it might just be a technique. I know a lot of other people use it, but it might just be the driving style that I use. But I applied the same technique as I do there to this corner. The exit's a little bit different because it sort of tightens before you make the switch to the right-hander. But that was probably the only real similarity. Every other corner there is either slightly off camber, maybe it's inside camber, outside camber, more. They're faster turns, so your entry speed and the speed you carry through them is a lot quicker. Whereas Darwin sort of feels a little bit tighter. And then, of course, the difference between the XL and the RX-8 Cup car as well, and the way that they're balanced and where the power comes on and all that sort of stuff. Would make it feel a bit different as well. But I would have loved to have the chance to swap cars at each track and just see how a circuit drives in a different car. But yeah, otherwise there's probably not too many similarities between them. The weather was definitely different. It was a cold and windy and wet and rainy kind of thing when we were down there in Sydney, which I hadn't experienced before. So that was good. And not just driving in I say it was wet, but we only had a couple of practice sessions that were wet. But just in the way you bring the heat into the tire and different brand of tire as well and things like that. So, so yeah, it was not too many similarities now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm. So you did say that you were going to consider your options. So by that token, it sounds like you had a lot more fun in the RX-8.
Yeah, it's a different car altogether, isn't it? Like they're newer cars. The category is really well put together. The support for people buying cars or leasing cars is already in place. It's based around the east coast of Australia, so I'm moving to southeast Queensland next year, so we'll be a lot closer. So the logistics for me traveling places, I'll save a fair bit of money there. So hopefully we'll be able to get around to a few different circuits. I am speaking to some teams at the moment. trying to put together the money for a 86 scholarship drive as well as an alternative. So that's probably the gold medal solution. And if we can't raise that money, then the RX8s is a cheaper alternative. But the cars are quite similar. I'm pretty sure the gearbox is the same in them. Power to weight ratios are very similar. Their lap times around Sydney were comparable. So for those that can't quite afford scholarship series, the RX8 is probably a good alternative. Jumping into car racing at my age, I am in my 30s, so it's a little bit later than, well, it's a lot later than what most people do. For me, it's all about kilometers. How much track time can I get? How many different cars can I experience? And just trying to do as much as possible. And the RX8s was a logical progression from XLs without breaking the budget too much.
Yeah, because let's be honest, Matt. I've spoken to a lot of people on this show, and I've started to figure out that there's no real proper starting age. Lots of people start at lots of different ages. I've had people start at 8 years old, like myself. I had people start at 4 years old. I've had people start at 15. I've had people start at 20, early 20s. Late teens. I've seen it all. So I don't think there's really a starting age to motorsport. And one thing I do notice is lots of people from a young age really wanted to do it, but it was just the money. The money's always stopped. So, you see lots of guys, once they're settled into their lives and, they've done quite well, then they'll move into racing, which I still think is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been a good experience. And the average age of those competing in Darwin would probably be 30s. We've got people at both ends of the scale, people that have gone and done other things and come back, guys that have just only ever done it as a hobby. Guys that have progressed to other series, and people coming up from karts and all sorts of stuff. So it's quite varied. I think realistically, my age probably prevents some of the options I would have if I wanted to go and do open wheelers and things like that. I think the ship has probably sailed on those sorts of things. Most people will be wrapping up a career at my age by this point. But in terms of other categories like touring cars, GTs, endurance, stuff like that, there's guys that go on and race well into their 50s and 60s. So, I think you're only as old as you feel. And for the time being, at least, I've still got the hustle. I've still got the drive to go and meet sponsors and meet teams and basically pester people, talk my way into whatever cars I can. You know what I mean? So while that fire burns, I'll do everything I can to try and make it happen. And if we fall short, we're going to have had a lifetime of fun, at least trying to get there. So the age thing doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah. I will just quickly say, you say Formula Cars is a bit out of reach, unless it's the Formula Ford 1600 series. You're totally wrong. Formula V is an awesome option. You should seriously. You should, if you could, you should look at doing a test day in a Formula V or a Formula Ford Kent, the older ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Really awesome.
Yeah. So open wheelers was the sport that got my attention when I was a kid. That was the thing that I always loved. Whenever we were, if we went to race events, supercars was cool, but I believe it was Formula Holden at the time, Australian Race Driver Series. That was always the one that got me to the fence, and that was always the one I looked at and went I want to do that. So I think at heart, open wheelers is probably still my favorite. Particularly if you look overseas, like IndyCar Series has been probably not as well publicized in Australia, but I think in terms of its its variety and the different competitors and teams and stuff like that, I think you can't beat that kind of series. But yeah, I've always got a soft spot for open wheelers. So yeah, if I can swing it in the budget, I'll definitely have a look.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about Formula V's are they're not actually that complicated, although they are an art. It's a bit of a, so you get lucky because you only use third and fourth. You never use second or first.
Right. Yeah.
Because the gear ratios that you run, first is from 0 to I think 20 or 30, something really short. Then seconds for 30 to 40 to about 70. And the slowest you ever go is 75, 80. So you don't need to drop it down more than that.
Yeah.
At the circuits we race anyway. So you only ever use third and fourth, and then the only sort of art is you got to drift it without counter steering it. So you got to come into a corner and you got to just counter steer. And if you can
Yeah.
get that right, you'll be up the front. That's
Yeah.
what I've
Right.
picked
Yeah.
up.
I always got the feeling they'd be really temperamental. I always thought they'd be, really finely tuned, balanced machines.
No, the agricultural, half of their cars are built by people on their own.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
Well,
know that.
the ones who run up the front, they're all balling, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
still a lot of cars floating around that were built by people back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cool.
But the setup, they're not really that bad. You just sort of you put a bit of camber in, you can play with the toe, but that's really about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys run a control tire then, I guess?
Yeah, we run a controlled Dunlop,
Yeah.
so it's a really good series. But look, to be fair, it's if you're not look, I don't know. It just sort of depends. If you jump in them and you really like it and you sort of connect straight away, then you can sort of be mid pack and you'll be fighting people all the time. But
Yeah.
if you take it a little bit easy, unfortunately, it's semi competitive, so you'll just be running by yourself.
Yeah. 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 I find the XLs is pretty similar. To get the most out of it, you got to wring its neck. And yeah, it gets expensive sometimes.
Yeah. The Formula Ford Kents though, lots of the guys there, don't get me wrong, it's still super competitive. Down in Victoria, they're still competing for championships. But the guys there, their number one thing is sort of respect on the track, and that's something
Yeah.
that you don't find a whole lot around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's important, right? Like, you want to see as many people doing it as you can.
Mm,
I think particularly at the grassroots, there's a lot of people, barely making it week to week, or if they have a serious accident, that's them for the season potentially done.
yeah,
So, um, we all love our cars. Everyone, every race driver has it in common. You know how much time, effort, and energy goes into getting it there and getting it all, everything together and having a race. No one wants to be putting it back on the trailer with bent wheels, or going home with something they got to repair, or can't afford to repair. So and it's a dangerous sport too. I think we lose sight of it these days because there are so many improvements in the safety stuff. But at the end of the day, it's you in a tin can flying around as fast as you can, and accidents can and will happen. And yeah, I think just that little bit of respect, given to your competitors or whatnot, means that you get a chance to race them again the week after. So yeah, I think it's important. But yeah, I think you're right. I think particularly in certain circles, you do find some people willing to chance things a little bit more. But I think at the grassroots, I think most people are we're all in the same boat. So lifting off occasionally isn't the worst thing in the world, I think.
no, definitely not. And coming through go karting, we saw that a lot. Lots of people
Yeah,
didn't want to take the second to lift, and
yeah,
overall championships are won by points, not by how many times you win. You can win DNF,
yeah.
win, and you're not going to win the championship. So that's
Yeah, of
just how it
course. Yeah,
goes.
yeah. I was just going to say, like that was pretty much our approach to this year. So we picked up third place in the championship. We had a couple of standout events. We got a few podiums, a couple of second places, a couple of third places. But for the majority of the year, we probably ran fourth, fifth, or sixth. Until the interstators came up, and then we were a little bit further back. But for the cars in Darwin, we sort of floated around in that area. But we did 26 races. We started all 26 and we finished all 26. And I think that's the reason why we finished as high up as we did, was just accumulating points. And even on the days where things didn't go well, we still finished within that top five or within that top six, versus guys who pulled the car over and jumped out because it wasn't quite right, or made mistakes, or mechanical failures or whatever. So yeah, consistency is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah, 100%. It that's what sort of gets you championships at the end of the day. But I did just want to ask you a bit of a one-off question.
Of
So
course, yeah.
you started a bit later on. So what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
Goodness. That is a good question, mate. Yeah, very good question. Uh, Start straight away. It's obviously a very difficult thing to get involved with, and I think some of my hesitation at other points in my life for doing it was that I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I was always into cars and always had a hobby cars and things like that, but the whole thing of, buying a fully prepped race car and trailering it to a circuit and all these things. I think I just didn't have the confidence to sort of be like, yeah, I can just go and do that. And I don't know if it's an age thing or experience thing, but when I think about what changed, it was really just me. I really just decided, like, no, stuff it, I'm going to go do it. And I could have made that decision years ago. You look at someone like yourself, who's, I get the feeling from a similar sort of background where always had enough, but you don't have a large amount of cash to go racing. But look at what you've done in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
I could have done something similar: beg, borrow, steal, whatever I had to do to talk people into letting you drive a car, or just go work with a team or something like that. If I knew, I guess if I'd asked more questions to people that were already doing it, I would have realized that it was possible and committed to it earlier. I think that's probably the only advice I would give myself, is just start and just try, and you'll find that normally the effort you apply is probably what you'll get back out of it. So that's probably what I'd say to me. Don't know if I would listen, but yeah, I would say. Yeah.
I reckon I've got about 5 people into motorsport just because I told them about motorcarnas and carnacross, because it's super cheap and you're going out and having a bit of fun, even sprint days.
But of course, yeah.
You're rocking the Napa hat, so I will ask the question: have you got anyone you'd like to thank for supporting you along the way?
Of course, yeah. Look, there's a lot of people. So all my current sponsors, Napa and the Motorsport Academy, obviously comes to mind first. Welder NT was a company up here in Darwin. Martini Racing Products, Mish's XL Garage, and of course all the other teams and competitors up here in Darwin, because we all sort of lean on each other a little bit for time to time for help and support and repairs and whatnot. And we wouldn't have made our first round if it wasn't for one of the bigger teams up here helping us out. So they know who they are. So thank you very much to them. And of course, thank you to my beautiful wife, Gemma, for putting up with all the motor racing talk. And, she's there when I have a good day. She's there when I have a bad day and all that. So thank you very much to friends and family for all their support. And everyone who likes our Facebook posts and follows me on Instagram and social media now as well. It's more attention than I ever thought I'd get. So, and of course, thank you to yourself, mate, as well, for inviting me on. It's really cool what you're doing. You're giving a lot of exposure to guys at the grassroots level. That's a really cool thing. So thank you very much for reaching out to me. I appreciate it.
That's totally fine, Matt. And honestly, I really do appreciate it. That's sort of the goal of Grassroots Racer. We want to try and talk to anybody and everybody who, if it's on a motor vehicle, I'm glad to talk to you. So, well,
Nice.
yeah.
If it's got wheels and an engine, yeah.
It's got an engine. I'm happy to talk. I talk to a lawnmower racer. I reckon that'd be awesome. If someone out there is racing a lawnmower, I want to interview you.
Listen to podcast right now. Get in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to interview someone who races a lawnmower. That'll be because there's quite a few still haven't done. So it'd be quite interesting to try and open up a few more. Well, I think
nice.
you're probably the 4th or 5th XL driver, and the third RX8, 3rd or 4th RX8.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good company then.
Maybe potential Toyota 86 driver.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the fundraising goes first.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for jumping on, Matt. I really do appreciate you spending your evening chatting to me. And thank you to everyone because we did recently jump on Spotify, which was a bit of a big move. So we really do appreciate everyone who's sort of jumped along. And if you guys don't know yet, we did make a separate page sort of on a few of our social medias for Grassroots Racers. So we do really appreciate all the support that we get for this. So remember, everyone, if you're, sitting around listening, just drop a like, drop a comment, tell us a bit about what you can, if you have any questions for Matt or, you got any feedback, let us do let us know, because I haven't really put that out there, but I do want to hear some feedback. So if anyone's got any feedback, please let us know. And thank you so much, Matt. I really do appreciate you jumping on. And one last thing. Yeah, and one last thing, if you're racing this weekend, drive fast and take chances, safely, of course.
Always. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.